He saved the starving alien cub. Hours later, it returned with its seductive space mother. Marcus Vega was stationed at a quiet habitat. The freezing colds of Alaska had engulfed the space station. The exterior of his metal-clad home was enduring -40 degrees. The heating system was on the verge of breaking down, and he was busy maintaining it. With his athletic build and muscular arms, he looked as if he had never left piloting, living as though he were ready for a mission at any moment. He was 42 years old, a retired military pilot who had served for 18 years and was now living out his retirement in an Alaskan space station. He had chosen to live alone, far away from everyone. His short hair had started to gray, but his 6'3" warrior form was still intact. He worked out regularly. Even though he was retired, that military regimentation now consumed his life. The space station was small, a prefab structure, a small room, a tiny kitchen, and a bedroom. Outside, there was a small plot established for growing fruits and vegetables in the summer. The nearest houses were behind the mountains, 200 miles away. As Marcus was preparing dinner, he heard an interesting sound from outside. It was coming from the door, a purring, scratching sound. It was coming persistently. He panicked and immediately grabbed his weapon. No one had visited this space station in the 14 months he had lived there. He was so far north that he didn't even see animals around. The scratching sound was heard again. It sounded desperate. Marcus activated the security camera, and what he saw surprised him greatly. It looked like a cub, though he couldn't figure out what species it belonged to. It had a strange appearance. It came up to Marcus's knees. It had a humanoid body. It had pinkish, tiger-striped fur. What was clear from his eyes was that it was hungry. "Oh my God," Marcus said. He thought it might be a trap. Predatory species could use their young as bait, but the cub he saw on the camera was writhing in hunger. Its ribs were countable. "Ah, little one, damn it," Marcus said as he opened the door. "If it were you, would you open it? I'm waiting for your comments." Once the door opened, the interior became ice cold. The alien cub looked at him and made a soft sound. "Are you lost? Where is your mother, little one?" Marcus asked. The cub didn't care what Marcus was saying. It had already caught the scent of food from the kitchen. "You're hungry, I see. Come on in," Marcus said. He was about to prepare dinner anyway, so he put some on a plate for the cub. The alien cub sniffed it for a short moment, then began to eat with its claws. Marcus felt the beauty of compassion once again. The cub finished its meal and made a sound to Marcus that seemed like a show of gratitude. It quickly ran toward the door. "Where are you going?" Marcus asked, but the cub was scratching at the door. He opened the door for the pink-furred cub and said, "See you later, little one. You've gotten old. Your compassion outweighs you now, Vega," he muttered to himself as he closed the door. He started eating his dinner. He had some protein packs and a vegetable plate. He was hungry. The intensity of the day and the recent event had tired him out a bit. After dinner, he lay down for a while. He picked up an old history book and started reading. After some time passed, that scratching sound from the door repeated. "You again?" He grumbled as he went to check the camera. The cub had returned, but this time there was an adult female of the same species with him. She was the most stunning alien Marcus had ever seen. She was a darker pink than the cub's fur, her stripes more distinct. She had an athletic body and wore a strange outfit. Marcus hesitated. Should he open the door? It occurred to him that he could pretend to be asleep. "What would you do?" I'm waiting for your comments, and if you've liked the story so far, don't forget to hit like. Marcus turned off his camera and thought for a while. He was uneasy. That trap scenario could have materialized. He didn't want anyone to get hurt, but despite that, he grabbed his weapon and moved toward the door. He opened the door, but was on high alert. Hi, Marcus said, suddenly realizing he was wearing nothing but a thermal t-shirt clinging to his muscular frame. The female alien tilted her head, then spoke in a surprisingly melodic voice, but the words were unintelligible. She pointed to the cub, then to Marcus, and placed a hand over her heart. "You're welcome," Marcus guessed, interpreting her movements as thanks. The alien woman approached with a fluid grace that reminded Marcus of the big cats in nature reserves back on Earth. She was tall for a female, nearly matching Marcus's 6 feet 3 inches height. Up close, he could see the fine details of her face. High cheekbones, a small nose, and lips curled in what might be a smile. She spoke again, this time reaching out to touch Marcus's arm. Her fingers were warm through her fur, and Marcus felt an unexpected jolt from the contact. "I don't understand," he said, resisting the urge to pull back. "Do you speak English?" The alien woman frowned, then slowly nodded. "Few words," she said haltingly. "Thank you, feed, son." "You're welcome," Marcus repeated, more confidently this time. He was hungry, yes, hungry. She put her hand on her chest. "Hi, Zara." She pointed to the cub. "He, Kai." "Marcus," he replied, pointing to himself. "Marcus Vega." "Marcus," Zara repeated. The name sounded exotic in her accented voice. She moved even closer, and to Marcus's surprise, began to make a sound remarkably like purring. Before Marcus could react, she leaned forward and rubbed her face against his neck in a clearly affectionate gesture. Marcus froze, completely unprepared for this intimate contact. The purring intensified as Zara continued to rub, her fur brushing softly against his skin. Unsure of the proper protocol for being nuzzled by a seductive alien tigress, he stood rigid. Finally, she pulled back, her eyes meeting Marcus's with an expression that needed no translation. Interest, gratitude, and something else that made Marcus's mouth go dry. "I have a translator," he managed, his voice coming out rougher than intended. "In storage. It might help us communicate better." Zara nodded, watching as Marcus went to a storage locker and retrieved an old military-grade universal translator. It was outdated tech, but it might bridge the gap. When he switched it on, the device hummed to life, scanning Zara as she spoke in her native tongue. A moment later, it began translating her words into English. "I cannot express the depth of my gratitude," the mechanical voice said. "You saved my son when others would have turned him away. Among my people, the Thyrians, this creates a life debt that cannot be ignored. I am bound by honor to repay your kindness." "That's really not necessary," Marcus said, uncomfortable with the formality. Anyone would have done the same. The translator relayed his words to Zara, who shook her head firmly. "No." The translation came. "In these harsh lands, few show kindness to strangers. You have a good heart, Marcus Vega. I will not forget this." She said something else to Kai, who nodded and moved to stand by her side. Then she turned back to Marcus, her expression serious. "We must return to our shelter before the night hunters emerge. But I promise you our paths are now entwined. The stars have brought us together for a purpose." Before Marcus could form a reply, Zara stepped forward again and, catching Marcus completely off guard, rubbed her cheek against his in a gesture that felt oddly intimate. The purring returned, vibrating against his skin, and Marcus found himself instinctively responding, leaning slightly into the contact. Then, as suddenly as they had appeared, Zara and Kai were gone, blending into the darkening Alaskan landscape with a speed and grace that reminded Marcus how perfectly adapted they were to this harsh environment in ways he would never be. He stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching the spot where they had vanished, his skin still tingling from the alien woman's touch. "What the hell just happened?" he asked the empty wilderness, receiving only silence in return, shaking his head. Marcus closed the door and returned to his now cold dinner, unable to shake the feeling that his carefully constructed solitude had been irrevocably breached. For 7 days, Marcus found himself distracted by thoughts of these unusual visitors. The station seemed emptier somehow, the silence more pronounced. He caught himself looking at the security monitors more often, expecting, perhaps hoping to see a flash of blue fur against the white snowscape. "Get a grip, Vega," he muttered on the 7th morning, forcing himself to fix a malfunctioning water heater. One weird encounter means nothing, however. When the pale winter sun reached its highest point, the proximity alarm blared. Marcus's heart rate spiked as he moved to the security panel. But he felt a strange mix of disappointment and worry when he saw only Kai alone, and clearly distressed. Marcus opened the door immediately. The alien cub burst in, chirping frantically, his small clawed hands grabbing at Marcus's pant leg and tugging. "Hey, calm down," Marcus said, kneeling to the cub's level. "Where is your mother?" Kai's eyes were wide with fear, his ears flattened against his skull. He made urgent gestures toward the wilderness, then pantomimed something Marcus couldn't understand. Hands crossed at the wrists, then a grabbing motion. "I don't understand," Marcus started, then remembered the translator. He quickly retrieved it, switching it on as Kai continued to communicate frantically. The device hummed, struggling to interpret the cub's distress sounds. Finally, it produced a broken translation: "Mother taken, bad hunters, cages, help." Marcus felt a cold knot in his stomach. Your mother was captured? By hunters? Kai nodded violently, relief evident in his posture that Marcus understood. How long ago? Where? Marcus asked, already moving toward the equipment locker. The translator relayed Kai's response. 2 sun cycles. Far ridge. Big ship. Marcus knew the ridge of rocky formation about 15 miles east that broke the monotony of the snow-covered landscape. If Zara had been taken there 2 days ago and the hunters still had a ship in the area. Do you know who took her? Marcus asked, pulling out his old combat gear. Kai made a series of hissing sounds, which the translator interpreted as scaleskins, collectors. They take us for pleasure houses. Marcus's jaw tightened. He had heard rumors of the Zorian slave trade during his military days. Reptilian aliens who captured exotic species to sell to wealthy collectors or worse, to establishments across the galaxy. The practice was illegal in Terran-controlled space, but out here on the frontier, there was no law but the one a man made for himself. As Marcus strapped on his combat vest and checked his plasma rifle, a voice in the back of his mind questioned his actions. He barely knew Zara. Getting involved meant risking his life and the peaceful existence he had built. The smart thing to do was to notify the nearest outpost and let the authorities, if they bothered, handle it. A tough decision. Should he risk his peaceful life and go, or ignore it? What would you do? But then he remembered how Zara had looked at him, the genuine gratitude in her eyes, the surprising intimacy of her feline gesture of thanks. And now her son, this small, terrified cub, had crossed miles of deadly wilderness alone to ask for his help. Damn it, Marcus muttered, making his decision. Kai, you need to show me exactly where they took her. The cub nodded eagerly, his posture straightening with hope. Marcus quickly packed essential supplies: water, rations, medical kit, extra ammo. He would need the snow speeder, a rugged solar-powered vehicle designed for rough terrain. As he prepared, he found himself falling back into the methodical routine of mission prep. Muscle memory from his military days was kicking in. Within 20 minutes, they were ready. Marcus strapped Kai into the passenger seat of the speeder, ensuring the cub was protected from the worst of the cold. We're going to find her, Marcus promised, not entirely sure if Kai understood him, without the translator now sitting in his vest pocket. And those scaleskin bastards are going to regret coming to my planet. As they sped across the snow, Marcus found himself reflecting on the absurdity of his situation. A week ago, he was content in his isolation, having deliberately cut himself off from the mess of other lives. Now, he was racing to save an alien woman he had met exactly once, with her cub as his guide, heading toward an unknown number of armed hostiles. It was madness, and yet, he felt more alive than he had in years. Kai guided him with gestures and occasional sounds interpreted by the translator. The cub seemed to gain confidence as the journey progressed, his initial fear replaced by a determination that reminded Marcus strongly of Zara. By late afternoon, they approached the ridge. Marcus slowed the speeder and parked it in the shadow of a massive rock formation. Concealing it from aerial view, we go on foot from here, he told Kai, helping the small alien out of the vehicle. Stay close to me and do exactly what I say. Kai nodded solemnly, his large eyes fixed on Marcus with total trust. Using the natural cover of the rocky terrain, they crept forward. As they crested a small rise, Marcus's breath caught. There, in a natural bowl formation, sat a sleek spaceship of obvious alien design. Its metallic surface reflected the pale sunlight, and around it, several tall, reptilian figures moved with predatory grace. Marcus counted 6 Zorians, all armed with energy weapons. Near the ship's loading ramp stood a row of cages, and in one of them, Zara, Marcus whispered, spotting the distinctive blue fur. She was alive, but clearly weakened. Her proud posture was diminished. Even from this distance, he could see her defiant demeanor as she snarled at a Zorian who poked her cage. With the butt of his weapon, Kai made a small sound of distress beside him, and Marcus placed a calming hand on the cub's shoulder. We're going to get her out, he promised quietly. But we need a plan. These are professional hunters with military-grade weapons. As Marcus studied the situation, calculating approach angles and potential distractions, he felt a familiar calm settle over him, the combat focus that had kept him alive. Through countless firefights, he was no longer a reclusive wilderness dweller. He was Captain Marcus Vega of the Terran Special Forces, and he had a mission the Zorians had made a Critical error in their arrogance. They had chosen to land on Thyrian soil and take something Marcus had decided was under his protection. They were about to learn why. Humans had gained a terrifying reputation. Across the galaxy, Marcus waited for darkness, using the remaining daylight to study the Zorians' patrol patterns. Their overconfidence was evident. Only one guard remained outside during the night shift, while the others retreated into the ship's warmer interior to escape the wilderness's freezing nighttime temperatures. "Perfect," Marcus whispered, checking his gear one final time. He turned to Kai, who watched him with unwavering trust. "I need you to stay hidden here. No matter what happens, don't come out until I return with your mother. Understand?" The translator relayed Kai's response. "I can help." "No ship systems." Marcus paused, reassessing the small alien. "You know Zorian technology?" Kai's ears twitched in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as affirmation. "Father was engineer. Taught me. Can disable engines, communications." Marcus considered this unexpected development. Sabotaging the ship would prevent pursuit if things went sideways. Still, bringing a kid into danger went against every instinct. "It's too risky," he began, but Kai's determined expression stopped him. "Mother is all I have," came the translated response. "Will not stay behind." Marcus recognized the resolve in those alien eyes, the same determination he'd seen in young recruits who lost everything but refused to surrender. With a reluctant nod, he outlined a new plan. "You'll enter through the maintenance hatch I spotted on the underside. Disable their communications first, then the engines. Nothing else. At the first sign of danger, you hide. I'll get your mother." As the moons rose, casting pale light across the snow, they made their approach. The lone guard was predictably lax, pacing a regular route that left blind spots in his surveillance. Marcus timed their movement perfectly, reaching the ship's underside without detection. The maintenance hatch was secured, but yielded to Marcus's military-grade bypass tool. He helped Kai inside, watching the small alien disappear into the ship's mechanical innards with surprising confidence. 20 minutes, Marcus whispered. "Then I'm coming in whether the systems are down or not," with Kai on his mission. Marcus circled the vessel, approaching the cargo hold where the cages were stored. The external access panel required another bypass, but soon he was inside the dimly lit hold. Surrounded by the musty scent of captive beings, Zara's cage was at the far end. Even in the low light, Marcus could see she wasn't moving. His heart hammered as he approached, relief washing over him when he detected the steady rise and fall of her chest. She was alive, but clearly sedated, her normally alert posture slumped against the bars. "Zara," he whispered, working on the cage lock. "It's Marcus. I'm getting you out of here." Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused and dilated. "Cuss," she slurred, the translator in his pocket rendering her faint vocalization. The lock clicked open, and Marcus carefully gathered her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, her normally toned body limp against his chest. Her fur was soft against his skin, and despite the urgency of their situation, he couldn't help noticing how perfectly she fit against him. "Hold on," he murmured, securing her over his shoulder in a rescue carry. "We're leaving." As if on cue, the ship's lights flickered and died, plunging the hold into darkness. Emergency lighting activated seconds later, bathing everything in red glow. Kai had succeeded. Marcus moved swiftly toward the exit, but froze at the sound of angry hissing from the corridor. The Zorians had noticed something was wrong. "Change of plans," he muttered, ducking behind a stack of supply crates as the cargo hold door slid open. 2 Zorians entered, their scaled skin appearing almost black in the emergency lighting. They moved with predatory grace, forked tongues flicking out to taste the air. "The female is missing," one hissed, approaching the empty cage. "Impossible," the other replied. "The sedative." Marcus didn't wait for them to finish. In one fluid motion, he laid Zara gently behind the crates and emerged with his pulse rifle raised. "Looking for something?" he asked coldly. The Zorians whirled, reaching for their weapons. But Marcus was faster. To precisely aim shots dropped them before they could fire. "Humans." One gurgled contemptuously as he fell. Always interfering, Marcus didn't bother responding. He retrieved Zara and moved into the corridor, alert for more threats. The ship's systems were in chaos, doors opening and closing randomly, environmental controls fluctuating. Kai was creating the perfect distraction. He encountered more Zorians on his way to the extraction point, dispatching them with ruthless efficiency. The military training he tried so hard to forget flowed through him naturally now. every movement purposeful and deadly. When he reached the maintenance hatch, Kai was already there, his small claws still working on an exposed panel of circuitry. "Time to go," Marcus said, adjusting Zara in his arms. Her head lolled against his chest, a soft purr escaping despite her sedated state. Kai nodded, disconnecting one final wire that sent sparks cascading across the panel. The ship shuddered ominously. "What did you do?" Marcus asked as they slipped through the hatch. The translator conveyed Kai's smug response. "Rooted coolant system. Engines will overheat if they try to start. Remind me never to underestimate you," Marcus said with newfound respect. They fled into the night, Marcus carrying Zara, while Kai ran alongside. Behind them, alarms blared from the crippled ship, followed by the enraged roars of the remaining Zorians. When they reached the speeder, Marcus carefully secured Zara in the passenger seat, then helped Kai climb in beside her. "Will she be okay?" Kai asked through the translator, his concern evident in the way he gently touched his mother's face. Marcus checked Zara's pulse and pupils. "The sedative is strong, but her system's fighting it. She'll recover." As if confirming his assessment, Zara stirred, her eyes opening briefly. When she recognized Marcus, a smile curved her lips. "You came." The translator rendered her slurred speech. "No, you would rest now," Marcus told her, brushing a strand of sapphire blue fur from her face. "You're safe." Her hand caught his, surprisingly strong despite her weakened state. "My champion," she purred before drifting back into unconsciousness. The unexpected intimacy of the moment caught Marcus off guard. Something protective and possessive stirred within him, feelings he'd thought long buried beneath years of military discipline and self-imposed isolation. As they sped across the moonlit snow toward his station, Marcus found himself constantly glancing at Zara's sleeping form. The Zorians would regroup eventually, perhaps call for reinforcements. His peaceful existence was likely over. Strangely, the thought didn't bother him as much as it should have. For the first time in years, he felt a sense of purpose, and something else he wasn't quite ready to name. By the time they reached Marcus's station, the first hints of dawn were beginning to paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. Zara remained unconscious, though her breathing had steadied, and occasional soft purrs escaped her lips whenever Marcus adjusted her in his arms. "Will she wake soon?" Kai asked through the translator as Marcus carried Zara inside. "The sedative should wear off in a few hours," Marcus replied gently, laying her on his bed. "She's strong. She'll pull through." While Zara slept, Marcus and Kai worked to secure the station. Marcus activated the old military-grade defense systems he'd kept dormant since his arrival: motion sensors, automated turrets, and reinforced shields for the windows and doors. Kai proved invaluable, his small claws deftly making adjustments to improve the system's efficiency. "You're quite the engineer," Marcus observed as Kai rewired a faulty sensor array. The translator conveyed Kai's response. "Father taught me." Before the collectors came, Marcus paused in his work. "What happened to your father?" Kai's ears flattened against his skull. "Tried to protect us. Collectors killed him. Mother and I escaped. Been hiding ever since." The simple, devastating explanation hit Marcus hard. He placed a hand on Kai's shoulder, a gesture that transcended species barriers. "I'm sorry, Kai. No one will hurt either of you again. Not while I'm around." By midday, the station was as secure as Marcus could make it with available resources. He checked on Zara, finding her still asleep but showing signs of increased awareness, switching ears. Occasional movements of her limbs. Kai had finally succumbed to exhaustion, curled into a tight ball on a makeshift bed of blankets in the main room. Marcus covered him with another blanket, then returned to Zara's side, pulling up a chair to watch over her. As the pale sun reached its zenith, Zara's eyes finally fluttered open. She blinked several times, her vertical pupils contracting in the light streaming through the reinforced windows. "Marcus," she murmured, her voice stronger now. "I'm here," he said, leaning forward. "You're safe." "Kai too." Zara attempted to sit up, but Marcus gently pressed her back down. "Easy. The sedative needs time to clear your system." She relaxed under his touch, a soft purr rumbling in her chest. "You saved me from the scale skins." "Kai deserves most of the credit," Marcus said. "He found me, led me to you, and sabotaged their ship." Kid's quite the warrior. Pride shimmered in Zara's eyes. Like his father, her expression darkened. "They will come again. The collectors will not stop." "What collectors?" Marcus asked, reaching for the translator to ensure he understood her fully. Zara's gaze turned distant. Lord Krex, a Draconian noble with a collection of rare species. My people, the Thyrians, are nearly extinct. He wants to add us to his menagerie. Marcus's jaw tightened. He'd heard of the Draconians, a reptilian species known for their wealth, power, and complete disregard for other sentient beings' rights. How did he find you? We've been running for years, Zara explained, her voice strengthening. Hiding on remote worlds. I thought this frozen wasteland was remote enough. She looked at Marcus, her large eyes intense. I never meant to bring danger to your door. You didn't, Marcus assured her. I chose to help. Zara reached out, her clawed fingers gently tracing the line of his jaw. Why? You barely know us. The question caught Marcus off guard. Why had he risked everything for this alien woman and her cub? The answer came more easily than he expected. Because it was right, he said simply, and because I couldn't stand the thought of never seeing you again. The admission hung in the air between them, honest and unadorned. Zara's pupils dilated and the purring in her chest deepened. Among my people, she said softly, such courage and protection creates a bond deeper than blood. You are now part of our family, Marcus Vega. Before he could respond, she leaned forward and nuzzled her face against his neck, her fur soft against his skin. This time, Marcus didn't freeze. Instead, he found himself returning the gesture, his hand coming up to stroke the silky fur at the nape of her neck. The contact sent an unexpected jolt of electricity through him. Zara sensed it too, he could tell by the way her purring intensified, and her body leaned closer to his. I should check the perimeter, Marcus said reluctantly, pulling back slightly. And Kai will want to know you're awake. Zara nodded, though her eyes held a promise that made Marcus's pulse quicken. We will talk more later. Over the next 3 days, they fell into an uneasy routine. Marcus continued to fortify the station, setting traps and fallback positions in case of attack. Kai, eager to help, became his shadow, absorbing every bit of human military knowledge Marcus shared. Zara recovered her strength quickly, her natural agility and grace returning. Marcus found himself increasingly distracted by her presence, the fluid way she moved, the musical quality of her laughter, the intensity of her gaze, which he thought he wasn't looking. On the third night, after Kai had fallen asleep, Zara joined Marcus on the station's small observation deck. The wilderness stretched before them, bathed in the silver light of a full moon. Your world is beautiful, Zara said, standing close enough that her fur occasionally brushed against Marcus's arm. It's harsh, Marcus replied. But yeah, beautiful in its way, like you, she said, turning to face him directly. A warrior who chose solitude, yet opened his home to strangers. Marcus felt heat rise to his face. I'm no hero, Zara. In my culture, we believe actions reveal the true soul, she said, stepping closer. Your actions speak loudly, Marcus Vega. Her proximity was intoxicating, the subtle scent of her fur, the warmth radiating from her body. When her hand came to rest on his chest, directly over his heart, Marcus knew he was fighting a losing battle against his growing feelings. Zara, he began, not entirely sure what he wanted to say. She silenced him by pressing a finger to his lips. Among my people, when a life debt is owed, it creates a connection that can never be broken. But what I feel for you goes beyond obligation. Her hand moved from his lips to the back of his neck, drawing him closer until their foreheads touched, an intimate gesture that felt both alien and perfectly natural. I don't want to misinterpret, Marcus said, his voice rough with emotion. Our species are different. Zara's soft laughter interrupted him. Not so different in the ways that matter, she purred, her eyes reflecting the moonlight. Unless humans do not feel desire? The directness of her question, so free of human hesitation, broke through Marcus's last defenses. With a groan, he pulled her against him, one hand tangling in her sapphire blue fur as their lips finally met. The kiss was both foreign and familiar, her lips softer than a human woman's, the subtle rasp of her fur against his skin creating a sensation he'd never experienced. When she responded with equal passion, a rumbling vibrating through her entire body, Marcus knew he was lost. That night, under the full moon of the Alaskan wilderness, a former pilot seeking only solitude found something he never expected, a bond, desire, and the beginning of something that transcended the boundaries of species and worlds. The shrill shriek of the alarm tore Marcus and Zara apart. Their intimate moment was shattered by the harsh reality of their situation. Marcus sprang to his feet instantly, his military training kicking in, and rushed to the security console. Perimeter breach. North sector, he announced, scanning the readouts. Multiple signals. Heavy transport class. Zara was at his side in seconds. Her body tense and alert, all traces of their previous tenderness replaced by a warrior's focus. Studying the thermal images, she confirmed Draconians. Lord Krex doesn't send scouts. He sends armies. Marcus activated the station's external cameras. The sight made his blood run cold. A massive Draconian assault ship was hovering over the snow, deploying smaller combat vehicles. At least 20 reptilian soldiers in gleaming battle armor were advancing toward the station. With more deploying behind them, they found us faster than I expected, Marcus muttered, quickly calculating their odds. The station's defenses were robust, but not designed to withstand a full-scale military assault. Kai burst into the room, his eyes wide with fear, but his stance determined. I could help, he insisted through the translator. No, Zara and Marcus said in unison. Marcus knelt to get down to the cub's level. Kai, I need you to do something even more important. Remember the hidden compartment we prepared? I need you to stay in there until this is over. But your mother and I can't fight effectively if we're worried about you. Marcus explained gently, but firmly. That is how you help us win. After a moment of hesitation, Kai nodded solemnly. Zara hugged him tightly, whispering something in their native tongue that the translator didn't catch. Then, the cub disappeared into the specially reinforced storage compartment Marcus had modified as a last resort bunker. He has your courage, Marcus said as they moved into defensive positions. Zara's lips curled into a sad smile, and his father's stubbornness. She checked the energy pistol Marcus had given her. What's our strategy? We hold out as long as we can, Marcus replied, activating the automated defense turrets. We make them pay for every inch. The first wave hit the outer perimeter, triggering the buried proximity mines Marcus had salvaged from his military supplies. The explosion blew several Draconians into the air, but the others continued to advance with disciplined precision. They're well trained. Marcus grimaced. Lord Krex hires only the best. Zara confirmed. Most are ex-military. Stripped of rank or discharged for excessive violence, the turrets opened fire, taking down 3 more attackers before concentrated return fire disabled them. Marcus had expected this. The turrets were always a distraction, not their main defense. When the Draconians reached the station's reinforced walls, Marcus activated the secondary defenses. Electrified panels convulsed 2 more soldiers, sending them to the ground. Impressive, Zara said, genuine admiration in her voice. We're just getting started, Marcus replied with a grim smile. When they breach the east gate and they will be waiting for them in the service corridor. We'll bottle them up there. The plan worked initially. When the Draconians blew the reinforced door, Marcus and Zara met them with heavy fire from their entrenched positions. 4 more reptilian soldiers fell before the others retreated to regroup. They weren't expecting this much resistance, Zara said, her breathing slightly elevated from the adrenaline. Humans have a reputation for being stubborn. Marcus replied, reloading his weapon quickly. Especially when protecting what's theirs. Their eyes met briefly, a wordless confirmation of what had started between them and what they were fighting to protect. The next attack came from multiple entry points simultaneously. Marcus had anticipated this too, triggering internal defenses that flooded the corridors with knockout gas. But the Draconians had adapted. They were wearing filtration masks that neutralized the gas. Fall back to position 3, Marcus ordered as enemy fire intensified. They retreated to the central living area, which Marcus had converted into a final defensive stand. Overturned furniture formed makeshift barricades, and he had rigged the ceiling panels with his last remaining explosives as they took cover. Zara touched his arm. Marcus, if we don't make it out of this, we will. Marcus interrupted firmly. Listen, she insisted. Last night wasn't just physical attraction. My people made for life. What we shared created a bond. In the eyes of my culture, we are already united. This confession hit Marcus with unexpected force. Among humans, such a commitment after knowing each other for so short a time might seem hasty, perhaps even reckless. But looking into Zara's eyes, he recognized the truth of his own feelings, which had grown with surprising speed and intensity since that first moment on his doorstep. That we have even more reason to survive, he said, squeezing her hand, because I want to explore this bond for a very long time. The moment was cut short by the sound of the Draconians breaching the final corridor. Marcus settled into the optimal firing angle, while Zara took a flanking position to provide crossfire. When the first reptilian soldiers appeared, Marcus detonated the sealing charges. The controlled explosion brought debris crashing down right on top of the advancing force, temporarily halting their progress. In the chaos, Marcus and Zara took down 3 more attackers, but the Draconians kept coming, their numerical superiority slowly pushing the defenders back. A stray energy shock grazed Marcus's shoulder, burning his shirt and searing the flesh beneath. He groaned in pain, but held his position. Zara noticed immediately. "You're hurt." "I'm fine," Marcus insisted, though the wound burned like fire. "Focus." The battle raged on for what felt like hours, but was likely only minutes. Marcus and Zara fought with perfect coordination, as if they had been combat partners for years, not days. When Marcus's weapon overheated, Zara covered him. When she needed to reload, Marcus laid down, suppressing fire. Despite their efforts, the situation was deteriorating. The Draconians had established a foothold in the room, and more were pouring in. Marcus knew they couldn't hold out much longer. Then, just as he was contemplating a desperate last stand, something unexpected happened. A new alarm sounded, not from one of the defense systems, but the station's long-range scanner. "New contacts," Marcus announced, glancing at the monitor. "Multiple signals. Terra military configuration." Zara's eyes widened. "Your people." Before Marcus could answer, the Draconian advance suddenly halted. Their commander received a transmission through his helmet, his reptilian features twisting in evident displeasure. "They're retreating," Zara whispered in disbelief. The Draconians had begun a disciplined withdrawal. Marcus checked the scanner again. 3 Terra cruisers just entered the atmosphere. That's a full battle group. As the last Draconian disappeared through the broken door, Marcus and Zara leaned against each other in exhausted relief. "How?" Zara asked, her fur matted with sweat and debris. "How did your military find us?" Marcus shook his head in equal bewilderment. "I don't know. I've been off the grid for over a year. No one should have known I was here." The station's comms system crackled to life. A familiar voice filling the room. "Captain Vega, this is Admiral Jennifer Hayes of the TDF Resolute. The area is secure. Draconian forces are in full retreat. Requesting permission to deploy a medical team." Marcus stared at the comms unit in shock. Jennifer Hayes had been his fleet commander during his last tour of duty. Permission granted. He replied automatically. "Admiral, how did you find us?" "That's a long story," Captain came to reply. "Let's just say we were monitoring Draconian communications when Lord Krex placed a bounty on a former Terra Special Forces pilot harboring endangered aliens. It caught our attention. The diplomatic corps has been looking for an excuse to pressure Krex for years." As Marcus processed this information, Zara moved to retrieve Kai from his hiding place. The cub emerged unharmed, but wide-eyed, immediately running to check on Marcus's wound. "You're bleeding," Kai observed through the translator, his small clawed hands hovering hesitantly over the injury. Marcus smiled, reassuring him. "Just a scratch, nothing that won't heal." As Terra medics and security personnel began arriving at the station, Marcus pulled Zara and Kai close, forming a protective circle around them. "What happens now?" Zara asked quietly, her eyes reflecting the uncertainty of their future. Marcus looked at her, then at Kai, and then at the Terra soldiers efficiently securing the area. His isolated existence had been irrevocably shattered, and he realized he didn't mind at all. "Now," he said, "we plan our next chapter together." 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of his new home, watching the sunset over a landscape very different from the harsh wilderness, where he had once sought solitude. Hills covered in purple bluegrass stretched toward distant mountain ranges, and a crystal-clear lake reflected the amber and violet hues of the evening sky. "I still can't believe this place belongs to us," he murmured, sensing Zara's presence before she even revealed herself. She approached him with that fluid grace that still captivated him, her blue-furred hand finding his with practiced familiarity. "Do you regret turning down Admiral Hayes' offer?" she asked, a teasing lilt in her voice. Marcus chuckled, pulling her close. "Not for a second." The days following the Draconian attack had been a whirlwind of briefings, medical treatments, and diplomatic negotiations. Admiral Hayes had indeed offered Marcus reinstatement with a promotion, but Marcus had surprised everyone, perhaps even himself, by declining. "I'm done with military life," he had told his former commander. "I want to build something, not fight to protect it." Marcus threw away a career that could have led all the way to the admiralship. "If it were you, would you take back your rank and return to the military, or choose love and head into the unknown?" I'm waiting for your answers in the comments. The Terra diplomatic corps, eager to smooth over the incident with the Draconians, but also wanting to assert human authority in the sector, had been surprisingly warm to Marcus's alternative proposal. A sanctuary for endangered species on a remote, resource-rich world under Terra protection. Captain Vega's unique experience with the Thyrians makes him perfectly positioned to oversee such a venture, the diplomatic liaison had argued, and it sends a clear message about Terra values without directly antagonizing Lord Krex. Marcus suspected the real reason was more pragmatic. The sanctuary was a perfect cover for establishing a Terra presence in a strategically valuable system. But he didn't care about the politics, as long as it provided the safety Zara, Kai, and eventually other refugees deserved. Kai's class is returning from their field trip, Zara said, pointing to a group of children emerging from the edge of the forest. In the months since their arrival, 3 more Thyrian families had found their way to the sanctuary, along with a handful of other endangered species fleeing collectors or exploitation. Kai, no longer the scared cub looming at Marcus's door, had blossomed into a confident young leader among the sanctuary's growing population of children. Marcus watched with pride as Kai showed something to the other children. From his gestures, Marcus realized it was a tracking technique he had taught him. "He's going to be taller than me soon," Marcus said, "and twice as smart." "He looks up to you," Zara said softly, "as do all my people." The human who stood up to a Draconian lord to protect strangers. Marcus felt a familiar warmth at her words. They aren't strangers anymore. Their relationship had deepened in ways he couldn't have imagined when he first fed that hungry, alien cub. The cultural differences that could have driven them apart had instead become a source of fascination and occasional humor as they built their lives together. Marcus had learned the intricate social rituals of Thyrian culture, the importance of scent marking shared spaces, the subtle ear positions that communicated emotion more clearly than words, the purring that could mean anything from contentment to desire depending on its pitch and intensity. In return, Zara had eagerly embraced human customs, particularly enjoying earth music and the concept of dancing, though her natural feline grace made Marcus's attempts look clumsy in comparison. "The new housing units will be ready next week," Marcus said, turning fully from the view to face her. "Just in time for the Corellian refugees." Zara's expression grew serious. "The council is worried about their integration. Corellians are known for being territorial. Humans were too, once," Marcus replied. "We'll make it work. That's what we do here." The success of the sanctuary had exceeded even Marcus's optimistic estimates. What started as a safe haven for Zara's people had evolved into a thriving community of diverse species, united by the need for protection and the desire to live in peace. It hadn't been easy, of course. The first few months were fraught with challenges, resource allocation disputes, cultural misunderstandings, and the constant vigilance required to ensure security. There had been 2 more attempts by bounty hunters to infiltrate the sanctuary, both thwarted by the defensive systems Marcus had designed with the help of Terra engineers. After evidence of poaching activities was presented to the Galactic Council, Lord Krex had ultimately been forced to publicly renounce his claim on the Thyrians. The diplomatic fallout had severely damaged Draconian standing in the sector, while boosting humanity's reputation as defenders of sentient beings. "You're thinking too much again," Zara observed, her vertical pupils dilating slightly as she studied his face. "I can almost hear the gears turning." Marcus smiled, brushing a lock of sapphire blue fur from her face. "Just appreciating how much has changed. A year ago, I was alone in Alaska, believing solitude was all I needed, and now," Zara prompted, pressing closer to him as a purr began to rumble in her chest. "Now I know better," Marcus said simply. Their lips met in a kiss that, despite the months spent getting to know each other, still held the thrill of discovery. Marcus had found Thyrian passion to be both familiar and exotic, the same primal desires expressed through traditions and reactions that held subtle differences. Zara broke the kiss and nuzzled into his neck, her purring intensifying, her sharp teeth grazing his skin just enough to send a shiver down his spine. It was a gesture that had startled him the first time, but now filled him with anticipation. "Kai will be busy with his friends for hours," she murmured suggestively. "And I've been thinking about you all day." Marcus laughed, scooping her up into his arms with ease. "Have I told you lately how much I love Thyrian candor?" "Only every day," she replied with a playful growl. Later, as they lay intertwined in the fading light, Zara traced the scar on Marcus's shoulder, a permanent reminder of the battle that had almost cost them everything. "I never properly thanked you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For feeding a hungry cub," she replied. "For opening your door when most would have kept it closed. For risking everything to save me." Marcus caught her hand and brought it to his lips. "It was the best decision I ever made, even though it cost you your solitude." "Especially because of that," Marcus said firmly. "I thought I wanted to be alone, but what I really needed was to find something worth fighting for." Zara's eyes shone with emotion. "There is a saying among my people, the greatest journeys begin with the smallest steps. Feeding Kai was your small step, and look where it brought us," Marcus mused, looking out at the sanctuary that had become their home, a place where the galaxy's outcasts and endangered could find protection under humanity's shield. The next morning, as Marcus oversaw the installation of new security measures, a Terra diplomatic shuttle arrived unannounced. Admiral Hayes herself disembarked, looking slightly uncomfortable in formal wear rather than her usual uniform. "Admiral." Marcus greeted her with a firm handshake. "This is unexpected. Congratulations are in order, Captain," Hayes said with a wry smile. "The Galactic Council has officially recognized your sanctuary as an autonomous protectorate. Under Terran mandate, you'll have full diplomatic status and increased resource allocation. That's surprising," Marcus admitted. "I didn't think the Council moved that fast on anything." Hayes' expression sobered. "What you built here has become something of a symbol. Humanity standing up for the rights of all sentient beings. The brass wants to capitalize on the goodwill it's generating." Marcus understood the political calculations behind the decision, but he appreciated the practical benefits too much to object. "As long as we can continue our mission, the sanctuary is happy to be a symbol." Walking through the grounds, Hayes observed the various species living and working together. Blue-furred Thyrians, crystalline Lumerians, even a few reptilian species that resembled the Draconians who had once hunted them. "You know," Hayes said thoughtfully, "when you left the service, I thought you were running away. Now I see you were running towards something better." Marcus watched Kai leading a group of children in a game that combined Thyrian hunting techniques with human tag. Nearby, Zara was deep in conversation with representatives from every species, her natural diplomacy evident in her stance. Marcus shrugged. "I just fed a hungry child. Everything else just followed." That evening, as the community gathered for their weekly communal meal, Marcus found himself surrounded by the family he never expected to have. Not just Zara and Kai, but all the refugees who had found safety under his protection. As conversations in a dozen different languages flowed around him, punctuated by laughter and the occasional translator error resulting in unintentional humor, Marcus caught Zara watching him from across the table. There was a question in her eyes, and he nodded, understanding without words. Later, they would celebrate in the privacy where their bodies communicated things that sometimes transcended language. But for now, this moment of community, this belonging, was an intimacy all its own. Marcus raised his glass in a silent toast to the strange twist of fate that had brought a hungry alien cub to his doorstep and changed the course of his life forever. Sometimes, he thought, the greatest adventures began with the simplest acts of kindness, and in a galaxy full of dangers and wonders, humanity's greatest strength might not be its technology or military might, but its capacity for compassion, the willingness to open the door to a stranger, to offer food to the hungry, shelter to the homeless, and protection to the defenseless. After all, that was what made humans truly exceptional. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the galaxy's most interesting stories. See you in the next adventure.